Hello, everybody. Melanin Girl here. In this video, I am going to show you one of the ways that a recipe calculator that I use, which helps me run my business, especially when I am trying out new recipes or planning to try out new recipes, and other things within that scope. As you know, if you're here watching this video, you're probably somebody that is either just getting started or you've been in it for a while, but you're still trying to figure out an appropriate way to find how much essentially you need to sell your products for. Because in my groups, that is the question that I see a lot of people ask. And while people do try to help and give them information, at the same time, sometimes it is needed like a step-by-step tutorial or something, like they actually need to see something. I know I'm a such person, so that is what this video is for. On this channel, I will start putting out more videos of little tips and tricks and business helps of stuff, whether it be through formulation or through digital means, because I'm also a web developer and stuff like that. Just stuff that I've learned that I feel would be very helpful to you. So if that is something that you would like to see, give me a like, subscribe, and follow. This is something that I've decided to dedicate myself to. So I'm still going to put out videos, but it always helps to know that there are people out there that really like what you're doing and want to see more of it. And in the comments after I finish the video, you can comment about, what you saw, what you didn't see that you might like to see next time, or more videos that you might like to see on this channel that you've been looking for, but you just can't seem to find, for small business formulators or, business makers or business tips or elsewhere. So with that being said, let's get into the video. So like I said, this is the recipe cost calculator or recipe costing calculator from Sugar Kitchen. As you can see up here, it's a lovely website. If you look at the top, and I will link the URL down at the bottom, you will see at the end after it says .com, it says .au. All that means is that this website is an Australian website. It was built in Australia, so there are going to be some differences, not really anything that can really affect you deeply, and I will explain that later. But it really is still helpful. I use it a lot, and I find like after you get into using this too, you're not going to stop using it because it's just awesome. In fact, in order to make it more US friendly, I'm actually coding one on my website that I am building, which I will also put a link for down below for when it gets finished. And it is somewhere you can follow me at, because up there you'll see I plan to have a blog up there, so you'll get more information about tips and tricks, and I will probably release faster on my channel, and some of my videos may only be available on my channel because I'm just trying to build up the knowledge and stuff that I do, and it's a lot easier for me to put it on my web because YouTube doesn't allow everything. There are certain things like I like to work with in my formulations, both in culinary formulations and in skincare formulations. I like to work with hemp and CBD, and while it is becoming more legal and friendly, there are still certain things in the platforms that they will and will not allow, and the only way for me to actually be able to do that is by having my own website and to be able to speak on it in a good way that's, most freeing is by my own website. So I will link the URL to my website below, and so for my blog and stuff, and the only way to see my blog is it is free to the public. Essentially, you just have to sign up and become a member, which is free. There's no cost to most of the stuff on my website. Some of it you can be seen without having to sign up, but some of it you will have to sign up to see, and that is just so that I can engage with my audience and give you more videos of what you would like. So getting back into this video, the recipe costing calculator, if you write it, says that input the quantity and cost of each ingredient in your recipe, along with the serving price per serve, and our calculator will provide the batch costs and gross profit percent, as well as the markup percentage. Now this calculator, actually, you can, for lack of better words, you can manipulate it to do much more than this, but just for simplicity's sake, to at least learn what the calculator does, let's first go through it as if you're going to use it for just these. So scrolling down, you can already see that I've kind of filled this out, as this is an explainer video, just to show you how, like, the most basic way that this calculator can be used. So one up here in this section right here, you have your recipe. So you have your recipe name. So whatever recipe that you are formulating, this is after really you've kind of gotten your recipe down and it is stable and everything else, and now you kind of just like mint it, scale it, whatever part of the scaling process, or like I said, this is the cost finding process to know what you're up against financially in order to make your stuff happen. Because in order to have a successful and stable business foundation, you need to know your cost, and not everybody knows how to find that out. But, you know, like I said, if you follow my channel at me and asked about stuff, I will do my best to teach you on things that you may or may not have known before. Okay, so after you have your recipe name, you have your number of servings. So the way to look at the number of servings is if you're making body butters, most of the time they're put in a container or a jar. Like I said, can be used for if you are making a small recipe or if you're scaling your recipe. All of that can help. It is important that you do put in the correct amount of servings right here, because that is going to change your factors in the long run. And then number 2, you can add your method. As you can see, I've added some things in. It's usually, this is how you work. Works best for you. Like, you can tailor this recipe costing calculator to like an actual kind of recipe. Use this calculator right here for the finding the cost portion, or you can use it like an actual recipe. It just has the numbers in it. So if you look here in the method, you'll see I have the prepare workspace, prepare and portion ingredients. Yours may not look like this. You don't have to add in the method portion. You can leave it blank and it won't affect the actual calculatings of the calculator. Or you can just use this method area to put in little notes that you don't want to forget. Or however you want to do it. This is kind of the only thing in this calculator that's actually optional. Though you don't have to put in the rest. You do need to make sure, the add method and the recipe name, you don't need to add those two, but the number of servings as well as the ingredients are important. And going down to the ingredients, you will now see a couple of things. So the first thing I put in the ingredient, it's not an actual physical ingredient, but I do believe it is important because I see a lot of people talking about this all the time, which is the concept of time in itself. Just like if you were to go to a daily job, you're putting in the time and you're putting in your hours and you're getting paid for those hours. So that is important to factor in, which a lot of people say you need to put in your time and whatnot and yada, 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 because that is important. And other people are like, okay, how do I calculate that? That doesn't, like, in a way, if you just say you need to account for your time and everything else, for lack of better words, that kind of doesn't make sense. And it's kind of like not helpful. It really is not helpful if you don't like show. So I'm going to show you in a way of how I do it. So we have time, and you work your time hourly. So with it, if you don't know, if you get seasoned, and of course eventually you figure out what you want to charge and stuff for your time. But just beginning, you have your first ingredient, which is your time. And this calculator, I erase it real quick. You can see it shows the quantity it measures in, or the measurements it does it in, is grams and milliliters. So like I said, it is a Australian calculator. They use European, which over in Europe, it's used like in metrics, I believe, in gram and stuff. It's not used in the US scale, which is helpful because you do want to learn how to convert in order to get a more precise recipe. But in this case, I have 40 grams, or each gram in this case equals an hour, which is just something you can start with so it's not as complicated. And then we have their cost of goods. So what it costs you to procure this time and your quantity used in recipe. That is this section. So how much used in the actual recipe, and that gives you your total cost over here. Now, how did I find these numbers? So the 40 hours in this case is just a simple representing a 40-hour work week. And then you may not work that full 40-hour work week. But I usually, just to keep things straight and even in a more base foundation, I just usually put 40 hours in here. So you may put in more hours. So if you put in like 60 hours, I would recommend that you change it to 60. But if you put in less hours and you get finished like faster or earlier, I would still recommend you keep this at 40 over here. So that way, you're just, it's like you're making more because you put in less time, but you make the same amount. So in a way, you don't have to put in as much time, but you're still making a good amount. And then the cost of goods, this 300 of what I got right here, if you look at 40, I just did for people starting out, like you're a beginner and everything, I just did the regular federal rate of $7.50. Now, if you're in a different state and your minimum wage is different, let's say your minimum wage is higher, like you're in Colorado or something, which I think their minimum wage is like $15, you can go ahead and put in your $15. The only thing that's going to do is like raise the total per serve cost, which you'll find out later in the end, which is okay because things in Colorado cost more. I myself am in the middle of the United States. I live in the Oklahoma, Texas area, so things don't cost as much as they do in Colorado. The minimum wage for at least in that, I'm more in the Oklahoma area, is $7.50. So if I was just starting out, I put in $7.50. Now, obviously, I'm going to want to make more soon, but just like my base rate of what I want to make of $7.50 comes out to the $300. And with that, you then want to put in your rest of your ingredients, like your regular ingredients right here, which is your mango butter down to your mica. You want to convert your ounces or whatever measure you would do into grams and milliliters. Obviously, grams is for your dry measurements, milliliters is for your liquid measurements, which all you need to do is you can go online and do a conversion calculator, and that's simply it. That's really the only hardest part of this calculator. The more ingredients you use, the more you have to input. So you're sitting down and inputting more. But the good part about it is once you input this once, you can save this recipe and you don't have to do it again. You know what you're working with. So you have this. If you look at the grams purchased, this is looks like a lot of grams, but really this ends out up here to like 5 pounds of body butter. The cost of goods. Now with the cost of goods, what you want to charge your customers for is your business. Some people like to just charge them let's say I bought this body butter for $45. Okay, but taxes brought it up to $55. You can add in that tax if you should so choose. Some people are like, you shouldn't charge your customers for tax and everything that you paid for. I say mind your business to that. What I charge my customers is my business. Whether they buy or not is another story, but And if you want, you can also add in your shipping costs and everything else. Like I said, that is your business of what you choose to do. The whole purpose of this calculator is to help you find your numbers. So with that, I've added the rest of the stuff in here going all the way down. It is calculated. At the end, another cool thing of, what you see like over here in the ingredients, you can make little notes about where you like to get your ingredients from. And of course, you can have like a little document on the side where if these don't work, you can get your ingredients from somewhere else. So you may have to do a new recipe sometimes if you have to get your ingredients from somewhere else. But essentially, once you figure it out, like I said, the hardest part will just be inputting it in. And this right here, the jars, obviously that's not an actual ingredient to go into the product. But you can still add it in because you still have to pay for your jars. Like your customers are still paying for, you have your jars, your labels, and everything else, which if you don't want to add that in, you don't have to. Or if you don't want to add it in right here and just add it in later and calculate it, you can. Sometimes I like to, at least for my sake, so I know what I'm spending, I'll do this. You tend to do this recipe twice. So I'll put it in sometimes especially when I'm trying to find newer recipes or whatnot, trying to find my place, I'll put in everything, my time, where I got my stuff from, my jars, where I got them from, the labels, all of that. And I'll put all that in. And if I'm trying to find like my total investment price, what I'll just do is I'll put in the cost of goods, and then I will match the quantity used in recipe to the quantity purchased. And all that will do is that it'll add up this for me, the cost of goods completely. And that will be my total batch cost of what you're looking at down here at the bottom. And when I am working to find out how much it's going to cost me totally to get all this stuff, using it as a calculator, that's what it will tell me. And then I'll do another recipe of where I'm actually portioning out my ingredients. And as you know, I may not use all of the talcum butter and the fragrance and the micas just to make body butters. I may be using it in another recipe, like to make body oils or scrub bars or something else. And it may come out differently. So the quantity purchased may still stay the same, but the quantity used in recipe, that will differentiate itself. And that helps in this way because as you add your ingredients, you can get a more precise calculation of what you need. Then at the bottom, like I said, you have your total batch cost. Well, what your total batch cost is the cost of what it took you to make that particular batch. Not the cost of all your cost of your goods, but just what it costs you to make that particular batch. So in this case, 100 jar batch for this and everything else with my time added in. If I were to take out my time, it would be like about $300 less. But you know, like I said, your time is valuable and you should always add it in as one of your base ingredients, your base point. And so that makes the total batch cost of this to $360. And like I said, if you want to find it out without your time, just take this out, just subtract the $300, or you can take this out up top or just do 0 and it'll take it out for you. And that'll help you find just that. But like I said, my time is valuable and that's staying there. So after it has done that, what right here is with the GST is a goods service tax, which that is not in really, well, that is sort of a kind of US American thing, but as a small business owner for right now, you don't really need to worry about this because you're buying your ingredients out, right? Like at regular Amazon stores, wholesale, even when you're buying in bulk, you may or not pay taxes. And that's something you can always add into your cost of goods. So with all of that, it takes for your batch cost, you find out that for the 100 jars that I have made, it has cost me, with my time and everything else, $3.96. And that is what it costs to make each of those 100 jars. So when selling your stuff, you know that if you sell it down to the lowest point technically that you could sell this, each jar is $3.97. Now, you may make a bit of a profit selling it for $3.97, but you won't make much of a profit and your time is valuable. And if you're trying to do this full time to pay your bills, then I mean, like the least you want to do for, if you do, you know, $7.50 or something for your jars, or whatever you decide to do your price. Down here you have your selling price for a serve, which it says $6.60. That is actually just the automations of the calculator itself. This part can actually be changed. So let's say I want to sell these jars. I guess in body recipe I can do like these are 8-ounce jars. That's something else you can put in to specify like the size of the jars. You don't have to put it in. If you're like, I don't know what size jars I'm going to put in. I know I'm just going to make like 100 ounces or whatever, 100 jars. Or that can be ounces or whatever. Like you'd work with that. But let's say you're making 100 8-ounce jars. And for each 8-ounce jar that you are doing, you are decided that you're going to sell each of those jars for $18.50, you know, going with the cost, market, and everything else. So what that does is once you put in your selling point of and this part is entirely up to you, but since you know what your total price per serve is, you can play with these numbers and, with your customers, and what you can look up the market, see what, other places like Sephora or any other marketing competitors or are doing. With that, you can try to price your stuff around that area, or you can go up and down. Now, another reason why this calculator is so valuable is like sales. So when people want to put stuff on sale to bring in sales, they don't typically know how much more or how much less they should charge anything. So if you know your total price per serve is $3.96, and you want to go and do a massive sale on your stuff and be like, everything is going, get stuff for $6 a piece, you're still getting a profit essentially, because you're still going above your total price that it took, total cost. And then down here you have your food gross profit. So what this takes here, your food gross profit, is the total of after your costs and everything. When when you're selling it and you sell it for over the additional money you bring in, is your gross profit, as well as it'll tell you how much you've marked up your food percentage. So in this case, because the total cost is so low and you're selling it at a higher price point, it says that you have marked up your stuff by about 360%. Okay. Now, before if you're worried, you're like, oh, well, no, that's too much. Like, if someone were to find out I'm marking up my price for $366, stop, okay? Okay, you are valuable. Your stuff is valuable. If it's good stuff, it will sell. You deserve a good selling point, just like these other companies. And then you have your calculate button, and down here you have your total generated profit. Now, as you can see right here, your total generated profit is not the same as what it would be really if you were to calculate your 100 jars times $18.50 per jar is about $1,800. Now, what this total generated profit here is how much you have made minus your cost of goods. And there is the difference that you have. So with your total cost is the total cost of what you cost to make this batch. But what this total generated profit is right here is what your additional money that you made in profit after you have bought all of your ingredients. And this right here is particularly what kind of people really want to know whenever they're getting ready to sell something, because they don't really have not learned to work with just the batch cost yet. They're like, out of all this money I spent on this stuff, how much am I going to make in the end in gross profit before I have to take out more taxes and stuff for Uncle Sam? This is what you're typically looking for, and this is the number that you can use to give your basis for the rest of your business, which I will talk about further in another video. But for this video, that is essentially how one of the ways how you're going to use this calculator to help build a foundation and run your small business in a way so that you know your numbers. It is not like complex. Like I said, the hardest part really is just inputting everything. If you don't want to put in the cost of your jars, you don't have to. If you don't want to put in the time you worked, you don't have to. If you don't want to put in the time, hourly time that you work because you don't know, like I said, just use just put in 40 grams as each gram representing an hour, and then putting the regular $7.50 as times 40, which is $300. So that's your base salary of what you get for the work week to help, figure out your cost. And then your jars, if you bought 100 jars and the jars are $23 total, taxes and everything, sending everything that you got off Amazon or whatever, you can add that in. So it'll help you calculate that. The only thing you really have to worry about is your quantity used in recipe. Oh, another thing, if you happen to make a mistake and stuff, it's not something you really got to worry about. If let's say you accidentally you bought 120 jars, this calculator will actually calculate with the cost percentage of each cents how much more about it's going to be. Now, obviously, if you were to buy 20 more jars, you might have to buy it in a set or whatnot. But if you're like me and you tend to buy and go to the source, it'll go up on your cost to help match that. And then last but not least, you can download your results as a PDF. And let me show you what it looks like as a PDF. So here we have what it's going to look like when you print this out. Of course, it has a Sugar Kitchen PDF calculator of the page. It has the links and stuff. It has your title, your servings, your ingredients, your quantities purchased, everything else up in here. And then it also has your method. Like I said, if you put in your method, it's just going to put your space up in here. Once it fills up the space, if it goes out, it's just going to put you in another page. Then you have your total batch cost and profit cost, which I think that's the only thing that I don't like down here, is that it's your food gross profit. It doesn't show sometimes. Something that it's, if you're getting kind of technical, you can find out, but once you have the rest of it, you can always calculate this or put this in again. Or if you want, you can just go to your snipping tool, just put in your snipping tool if you're really wanting to find this information, because I haven't found out how to make it like work yet. Sometimes it messes up. Just click new and you can snip a picture, so that way you have that information that's kind of cut off, and you just save it to your computer. But yeah, that is essentially the end of the video on how you can use this calculator to find your cost, price point, and give you a foundation to work off of with. Because when you know your numbers, most people, they get into business, but they don't tend to know the numbers. They don't get to know the specifics, the ins and out, the business information that they probably need to know that could cost them in the future. They tend to they don't know those things because no one either told them, or you don't know what you don't know, and there's nothing wrong with that. And once again, my goal is to bring forth that attention that yes, you can find more on other places here on YouTube and whatnot, but I don't feel like there's a lot of people talking enough about that in a way or they will talk about it. It'll just be an over broad view of every industry. And since I am more into the recipe formulation of both baking and skincare, the only difference between the two is one can be eaten and one really can't. So it kind of goes hand in hand to help you guys out in my industry. So if that is more videos or something that you would like to see, go ahead and give me a like and a follow once again, please, as well as your comments down below and what other videos that you would like to see or anything else that you have been wondering what I can make my next video on. I'm looking for ideas and whatnot. And like I said, go check out my page. I think I'll link my TikTok and stuff below so that you can follow me on my stuff. I'm always like giving good information, some on specific platforms and whatnot. And yeah, with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day and that this calculator helps you out a lot, as I know it will. If there's anything you feel like I missed, once again, just let me know. But other than that, you'll have a wonderful day. Bless you, and I hope that you all the success in the world. And yeah, bye.